Hey everyone, and welcome back to another art video, and today we're doing something that is pushing me really out of my comfort zone, and we are going to be trying using metallic watercolour paints on black paper, which is really exciting and something I've never done before and is probably going to require a whole different set of skills to anything I'm used to or anything I've done before. I'm going to be using a few different sets of watercolour paints here. One of them is a Komorebi, a little watercolour set that I was sent by a fan. Then there's the Kuretake watercolours, which only have 3 metallics in, but we're going to be using them, and they were sent as a gift as well. And then a favourite of mine, which is a little tiny Paul Rubens set. Now the Kuretake ones, you need to kind of add a little bit of water to beforehand and just kind of leave to set for a while and let it kind of soak it up to sort of activate the paint. It's weird, they're not quite like regular watercolour paints, but they're not as matte or opaque as gouache, but they're not quite as see-through as regular watercolours. So they're interesting, they're fun. I really love these paints. I use them quite a lot and they're wonderful for everything, but this is the first time I properly used the metallic ones, I think, and it was interesting. It was a good little experience. These were probably like my second favourite ones, but I didn't end up using them in the painting at the end. The main ones that I used in my main painting were the Paul Rubens ones because I found them the most consistent, they had the most choice of colour, and they were probably the easiest to blend with each other, if that makes sense. The other set in the middle, the Komorebi ones, they were a really weird experience to use. And you'll see this as I go on to swatch them. I'm just activating these other colours first. So these Komorebi ones weren't as opaque as I wanted, and they didn't really get full coverage, but they were also very pigmented. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, the colour was very bright, but it didn't give me a whole lot of coverage on the black paper. I found that the yellow gold colours were a little too green for my taste, so I wasn't really a big fan. And what's really weird is that these paints didn't dry properly in the pans afterwards. So I left these paints out overnight, and when I came to them the next morning, they were still wet, which is really weird and not at all like regular watercolours. And when I poked them with my finger, I left a dent in the paints, and they were sticky for about 3 or 4 days afterwards. So it's really odd. I have no idea what is in these paints, but they are not regular watercolours at all, and I do not recommend. But I have left a link in the video description below if you want to check out a similar colour palette, but made by Kuretake rather than this Komorebi brand. So yeah, I started by just swatching these to see what they would be like on regular black watercolour paper. This is 300-gram paper, so it was good. It held up really well, although I didn't get it too wet, so I guess it wasn't really like a full test. The painting that I ended up doing at the end was way more like kind of basic line art illustration stuff rather than something that I guess really utilises the watercolours to their full ability. So I was doing this again. I'd like to do more kind of like big washes of colour and really kind of like soak it into the paper and test this paper to its limits. I think it'd be really cool to do something like a jellyfish or some other kind of fish or sea creature with these paints and see what happens. This is just a regular kind of I don't know what you call it, like paper. It's not like a cotton paper or anything. If you do want a cotton watercolour paper, I really recommend the Paul Rubens ones. Fantastic quality, absolutely beautiful. It is a pleasure to paint on. But this little paper set that I got here, it was a brand I'd never used before, and I was actually really impressed. It did really hold up, it was nice, it had a good texture, and it was just really fun to work with. So you can see these Paul Rubens paints were absolutely stunning in terms of colour selection, and they gave me really good coverage. They were really pigmented. The darkest purple was a really kind of odd one to use because it looked almost black in some lights, and then in others it was like properly shining, and it had this really like gorgeous silver glittery pigment inside it, but you couldn't see that in every light, so it was an interesting one. But you can kind of see them all here once they were dried, and they're just beautiful colours. So I did this original sketch of like a little bottle over on some scrap paper and then transferred it to my watercolour paper via just some tracing paper basically, because I didn't want to risk ruining the black paper. I thought it would be hard to draw on and I wanted to try and get it right. What I'm drawing here is a really big kind of glass apothecary bottle, and I don't know if you've ever seen these. I don't know if they're like used much at all in America or anything like that, but in the UK these bottles have like a huge long history, and especially in kind of like Victorian pharmacies and stuff, they would have these huge giant bottles of this in the windows and they would store stuff in them, and also it was just kind of like a bit of a, I guess like a display piece as well. And when I was 14 I used to work in a little pharmacy that is incredibly old. It goes back like 5 generations. It's been in the same family that long, and it's probably, I think, something like 125 years old now. And they have all of these old apothecary bottles upstairs in the pharmacy, and they still have some on display in the windows. And upstairs they also had all the old like medicine cabinets and chests and lots of little bottles and stuff, and it was kind of like working in a small museum up there. It was really, really cool, and I did like it. And that's why when I saw these paints and I got this paper and I got this idea, I was like, I really want to do this kind of not like hyper realistic, because I want it more illustration-y and fantasy-ish sort of thing, but I want to do one of these bottles and I want to have kind of like the lid off, and I want to have these sort of like vapors and medicine and magic kind of pouring out of the top, and that's what I tried to do. And again, I think this is the first time I tried to paint glass, and it was really, really tricky and really difficult. And I mostly just stuck with trying to kind of like paint the outline of the bottle and then give it some reflections in this kind of like pearly white colour that's not quite a silver, it's way more white than that. And I think it turned out okay-ish. I like that I used a little bit of pink on the lid, and I wish I'd done that some more throughout the main bottle. But mostly I was focusing on trying to get these like wisps, and I wanted it to look like liquid kind of sinking to the bottom and then kind of like evaporating off into vapors as it came out the top. And I really like all the shapes I got inside the bottle here. But then as I went on to do the wisps at the top, I think they were maybe a little bit too thin, and I could have done something more with them, and I'd like to get it looking more kind of like they are actually evaporating off into nothingness. So I could have played with kind of like blending the colours a bit more, making the paint more like splotchy in places and stuff like that. But like I say, for a first attempt, I kind of like how this turned out, and it's given me some more ideas what I can do with these paints in the future. This was more about just kind of getting to grips with them and trying them out for the first time and understanding like how they blended together and stuff. And as you can kind of see here at the bottom, especially where it's like liquidy at the bottom of the bottle, it wasn't the easiest to get these paints to kind of blend with each other. These Paul Rubens ones blended better than any of the others, but it still wasn't the easiest at times. You'll see as we go on to do some of these like little like vapory bits, I tried blending a few of the colours here together, and it was a little bit hard. They were just sort of sitting next to each other and not quite blending properly. So I'm not sure if maybe I needed more water for that, but then the colours wouldn't have been as pigmented. So I'm not sure. Maybe I should have done more layers. Maybe I don't know. This is all trial and error and things I can learn in the future. But if you've used any of these paints and you have any advice, please let me know down in the comments. So while this probably wasn't I guess the most typical use of watercolours, I was just kind of going for like thin lines and sort of attempting to blend the colours in really small places. It was a really fun painting to do, and it was quite relaxing, and it was really, really simple, and it was just a nice little, I guess, like break from everything. I've been so ridiculously stressed this last week, and just everything that can go wrong has been going wrong in terms of like writing and trying to record videos and tech problems and everything. And it was just absolute nightmare. So this was actually just like a really nice, simple, relaxing painting that I could just sit down and do for an hour or something like that. And it just, it was good to not have to think about much. I did get a little bit more experimental as we come to the end here, and I started trying to like do some paint splotches and splatters, and I was like, shaking the paintbrush and tapping it and trying to get the paint really watery in order to do these splatters and stuff. And I think it turned out okay. I'm worried I made the paint a little bit too busy, so maybe if I was doing this again, I wouldn't put the splatters inside the bottle quite so much, and I probably wouldn't do any towards the bottom of the painting either, because I like this big black negative space, and I wish I'd kept more of that. But again, learning, this is what we do. You make a piece of work, you go back, you analyze it, and you figure out what you can do better, what you didn't like so much, what you did like, and then you do better next time. That's how you get better with art. That's what this channel's for me anyway. It's about learning and growing and improving and just trying things out as we go. But like I said, the next big thing I'd really like to try out with these paints is doing something with like a bit more of like big splotchy colours and kind of like a metallic wash in the background, and then maybe bringing in some regular watercolours that are a bit more matte and a little more kind of like colour blocky on top of them to see how they respond together and react. And just kind of wondering if I can put anything over these paints. So maybe like add Posca pen on the top or some coloured pencil and see how that holds up over these metallic colours. I don't know, I just think they're going to be very versatile, and there's a lot of things I can do with these, and I'm very, very excited to play more and try more different things and just see what happens. But until then, I'm happy with how this painting came out for a first attempt, but I am full of ideas for how I can make it better and improve these things in the future. That said, if you do like this painting, it is available as a print over on my website, so you can go and get your own copy now if you want, and you can also get copies of any of the other paintings I've done on this channel or in the last couple of years over on my website as well. It's just racheloates.uk, and the link will be in the video description. But for now, thank you so much for watching today's video. Thank you for joining me on this little journey to try and improve my art and try out some new products and just have a little bit of fun. If you are new here, it would be wonderful if you want to subscribe, and also you can go subscribe to my main channel for videos about book reviews and sciencey stuff and history and social commentary and all kinds of fun stuff like that. But for now, thank you for watching. I appreciate you a lot, and I will see you again very soon.